Okay, so we're all familiar with the Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie case, so I'm not gonna go over all that again and rehash that. The short version: boy meets girl, boy and girl fall in love, get engaged. Then they decided to take a van life trip across the country. The relationship broke down. She ended up dead, and he was on the run, only to be found dead himself. And in between, there was all kinds of drama. And so I'm not getting into the drama. Please put a one in the chat room if you can hear me. Get my other one. I guess we are going to get into a little bit of the foolishness with Brian Laundrie because we're going to talk about his confession from the infamous notebook that everyone's been waiting to lay eyes on. And in between, we're going to do some missing kids because missing kids are way more important than Brian's drama. So we're going to read Brian Laundrie's notebook confession and his message to Gabby Petito. If you want to read it in the original like this, then you can find that posted online. I know Brian Ensign posted it on Twitter, so he more than likely also posted it on Facebook and some other places. There are several channels that are covering it, and most of the ones that are covering it are showing the original notebook pictures. I'm going to read from the transcript because I've read it. I've read along with some creators today as they were reading it. I was looking at the journal and his handwriting, or whoever's handwriting this is, hey Arctic, makes my head hurt. So I'm going to read from the transcript and not from the actual images of the notepad. All right. Note, this article contains details that could be disturbing to some, including mentions of harm, death, and suicide. So I already put up the trigger warning twice. That is your last and final warning. If you have issues or you feel like you might be triggered or anything like that, this is your very last opportunity to leave the chat and spare yourself. I personally suffer with PTSD, so I'm just giving you fair warning because I know what it's like when somebody or something touches the wrong button. So if you want to leave, if you need to leave, leave now. Okay, an attorney for the Laundrie family released contents of Brian Laundrie's notebook on Friday, including what appeared to be his confession and explanation for I can't talk right tonight, explanation for killing his fiancee Gabby Petito. This is a rough transcription of the 8 pages of Brian Laundrie's notebook released by Steve Bertolino. And since it was released by Steve Bertolino, then we know that this was not issued for any just out of the kindness of his heart. There is some kind of motive. It's a chess move. He's not playing checkers. He released this for a reason, and he released it at the time that he did for a reason. According to the notebook supposedly written by Brian, Gabby, I wish I was right at your side. I wish I could be talking to you right now. I'd be going through every memory we made, getting even more excited for the future. But we lost our future. I can't live without you. I've lost every day we could have spent together, every holiday. I'll never get to play with Illegible again. Never go hiking with TJ. I love you more than anything. I can't bear to look at our photos, to recall great times because it is why I cannot go on. When I close my eyes, I will think of laughing on the roof of the van, falling asleep to the sight of Illegible at the Crystal Geyser. I will always love you. If you were reading Gab's journal, looking at photos from our life together, flipping through old cards, you wouldn't want to live a day without her. Knowing that every day you'll wake up without her, you wouldn't want to wake up. I'm sorry to everyone this will affect. Gabby was the love of my life, but I know adored by many. I'm so very sorry to her family because I love them. I consider her younger siblings my best friends. I'm very sorry to my family. This is a shock to them as well as a terrible grief. They loved as much, if not more than me, a new daughter to my mother, an aunt to my nephews. Please do not make this harder for them. This occurred as an unexpected tragedy, rushing back to our car, trying to cross the streams of illegible before it got too dark to see, too cold. I hear a splash and a scream. I could barely see. I couldn't find her for a moment. Shouted her name. I found her breathing heavily, gasping illegibly. She was freezing cold, illegible, the blazing hot national parks in Utah. Excuse me. The temperature had dropped to freezing when she was soaking wet. I carried her as far as I could from the stream toward the car, stumbling, exhausted, in shock with my illegible and knew I couldn't carry her safe. I started a fire and spooned her as close to the heat. She was so thin. Had already been freezing too long. I couldn't at the time realize that I should have started the fire first, but I wanted her out of the cold back to the car. From where I started the fire, I had no idea how far the car may be. I only knew it was across the creek. When I pulled Gabby out of the water, she couldn't tell me what hurt. She had a small bump on her forehead that eventually got larger. Her feet hurt, her wrist hurt, but she was freezing, shaking violently. While carrying her, she continually made sounds of pain. Laying next to her, she said little, lapsing between violent shakes, gasping in pain, begging for an end to her pain. She would fall asleep and I would shake her awake, fearing she shouldn't close her eyes if she had a concussion. She would wake in pain, start her whole painful cycle again, illegible, furious that I was the one waking her. She wouldn't let me try to cross the creek, thought like me that the fire would go out in her sleep and she'd freeze. I don't know the extent, or I think that should have been extent, is what he was trying to say, of Gabby's injuries, only that she was in extreme pain. I ended her life. I thought it was merciful. That is what she that it is what she wanted. But I see now all the mistakes I made. I panicked. I was in shock. But from the moment I decided, took away her pain, I knew I couldn't go on without her. I'm trying to make it to the end, y'all, before I say anything. I rushed home to spend any time I had left with my family. I wanted to drive north and let James or TJ kill me, but I wouldn't want them to spend time in jail over my mistake, even though I'm sure they would have liked to. I'm ending my life not because of fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her. I've lost our whole future together, every moment we could have shared. I'm sorry for everyone's loss. Please do not make life harder for my family. They lost a son and a daughter, the most wonderful girl in the world. Gabby, I'm sorry. I have killed myself by this creek in hopes that animals may tear me apart, that I make some of her family happy, that it may make some of her family happy. Please pick up all of my things. Gabby hated people who litter. After the notebook contents were released by Laundrie's family attorney, an attorney for Gabby Petito's parents released the following statement. I'm shocked that within 30 minutes of the time we left the FBI office, the notebook was released. Neither myself nor Joe Petito nor or Nicole Schmidt released that from the notebook. Whew, so much to say. So much to say. So first, I did a word cloud. I copied and pasted everything that he wrote, and I did a word cloud. And I saw something interesting. In his writing, in this 8 pages or 7.5 pages or whatever it was, he used Gabby's name, Gabby, 6 times. He used the word pain 6 times. He used the word I 60 times. He used I 10 times more than both Gabby and Payne. He referred to himself 10 times more often in this note, or whatever you want to call it, than he referred to Gabby. If a person speaks and it's me, to me that says the focus is them, not whatever they're supposedly talking about or whomever they're supposed to be talking about. Because if the focus were not them, I'll do it in first person. If the focus were not me, then I would say you, he, she, it, the car, the boat, the whatever. But if I keep saying I, the focus is Savage. So in his writing, the focus was Bryant. Tammy, I am so glad you're here. There was a mix up with the time zones, apparently. I came in early and saw that you had been and left. So I have a Channel Angel Live set up for just you. And I will email the link to you. Tonight, as soon as this live ends, I will email the link to you so that we can do it tomorrow night at 7 p.m. East Central Time. So 7 where I'm at. I'm on Louisiana time. So if you're like uh Eastern Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas or something, then it'll be 8 p.m. for you. But if you're like further past Texas and all that, then it's like 9 or 10 p.m. for you. I'm not sure where you are, but it's 7 p.m. Central Time. Okay, so back to this foolishness. Me. So let's break this down together and let's see if I'm the only one who feels the way that I feel about this. I feel like the beginning part, the what was referred to by I think Hey Josh or Hey JB called it a love letter to Gabby. I think that the love letter part was really self-serving because he speaks more about himself, things he'll never go hiking with TJ again. He'll never get to play with whoever again. He can't bear to look at the photos, and that's the reason that he can't go on. He's talking to Gabby, but he's talking to Gabby about him. He's talking about his pain. He's not even addressing the pain of her family, of her friends, her siblings, people that lost her, who cared about her. He's talking about him. He's talking about his memories. Us laughing on the roof, falling asleep at the sight of whatever at Crystal Geyser. And I think in another transcription of this, it says a meteor shower. So even his supposed love letter to Gabby was all about him. The next part, and he's speaking to whoever he's speaking to, he's saying, if you were reading Gabby's journal and looking at the photos from our life together, flipping through old cards, you wouldn't want to live a day without her. Again, he's focusing on how he's feeling. He's assuming that you wouldn't, if you were in his shoes, you wouldn't be able to go a day without her because he says he can't go a day without her. It's not even about Gabby. Okay, so I'm going to say he used her name 7 times since one of them says Gabs. Still, that's like 9 point something more times than he used her name. He's apologizing to his family. He's apologizing to her family. And I have to question the sincerity of that. Because in the next part, he starts explaining what he says led up to her death, right? And it really doesn't add up. because when you're hiking or something like that, or exploring woods or whatever, and he was a known hiker, he was an avid hiker. Hikers pay attention to their landmarks, how far they traveled, which direction they were traveling. So there's no reason for him to have not realized how close they were to the van. They were close enough that he was able to go to the van and get out of the state park after he killed her and left her wherever she was left. He said he had no idea how far away the van was. What was he thinking when he wrote this that made him think this explanation would be satisfactory to anyone, that my only option was to kill her to put her out of her pain? He didn't think about, let me build a fire so that she can be warm, and let me go over that way a little bit and see if I see the van, see how close it is. Maybe drive it a little further up the road so I can take her to it if it's closer. Not let me go try to see if I can flag somebody down and get some help, because it wasn't like they were in some desolate area where absolutely nobody comes. We saw that Red, White, and Bethune caught their van on the camera on their dash cam as they passed by. And then I'm not sure of how true it is or how much confidence I have in it, but there was another camper who said that she actually went over to the van and spoke to him. So that's at least two other parties that were out there. So your only option was to kill her and leave her by this creek. And that's supposed to be a justification. She was in pain. She was screaming for help. Da 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 da. I think that's a whole boatload of hogwash and bull guts. Nothing about that story makes sense to me. She slipped in the creek and she hurt herself. But he says he doesn't know how she was hurt. But then he says she had a bump on her head, her wrist hurt, her feet hurt. If you don't know how she, what the extent of her injuries were, or you don't know how she was or what was hurt on her, how did you just name off three specific things that were hurt on her? Make it make sense now, for me and for you. Okay. He said she was begging for an end to her pain. What normal person takes someone crying for their pain to end as a cry for their life to end? And then he said he didn't know the extent of her injuries. So if he didn't know the extent of her injuries, how did he know? What made him just automatically jump to she's so injured that I need to put her out of her misery? Yeah, exactly. He's trying to come up with a cover story that's going to fit whatever he thought they were going to find in the autopsy. Because if I see someone hurt themselves, fall in a river, bump their head on a rock, whatever, I am not going to automatically assume that they're in such pain and that they're so badly injured that I need to kill them and mercifully put them out of their suffering because there's no way they can survive me trying to go for help or getting them to a hospital or something like that. I mean, unless, and we know it isn't true, but unless she had fallen and there was like an obvious gaping hole in the side of her head from hitting her head on a sharp rock, but we know that's not true because they didn't say anything like that in the autopsy report. They didn't call off an injury like that. They said she died from strangulation, from manual strangulation. The rest of it they didn't really tell us. If she had died from a big hole in her head, they would have said that. If she had died from a broken neck, they would have said that. They said she died from manual strangulation. And then it's not like he's got x-ray vision. Even if she had fallen and caused herself some type of internal injury, there's no way in the world that he could have known she had a ruptured spleen or punctured a kidney or something like that or broke a rib. And none of that is necessarily something that you can't survive. So everything that he wrote so far is just hogwash, bull guts, and CYA. Feel bad for me because I lost the love of my life. Feel bad for me because I lost the love of my life in a way that was traumatic for me because I had to take her life. I didn't have a choice. You got to really be kidding me. So then he says, I rushed home to spend any time I had left with my family. I wanted to drive north and let James and TJ kill me. Here's the thing, if that's what you wanted to do, that's what you would have done. Because in that type of situation, a normal person, let's just go with what he wrote, right? So I'm with my fiance, the love of my life. My fiance, the love of my life, injures themselves so freaking badly that the only merciful thing to do is to kill them and end their suffering because they're going to die anyway, right? So I have to kill the person that I love and had planned to spend the rest of my life with. But my first actions afterward, my first mission afterward is to go and not call police and say, hey, this happened. It's to run thousands of miles away so that I can spend a few days or whatever with my family. That's my first action. So to me, under normal circumstances, even under outrageous circumstances, that doesn't make sense. Because if you loved her so much and what you did was basically a mercy killing because she was unavoidably going to die anyway, then you would have had no reason not to inform the authorities that she was dead and where she was. So again, bullcorn, bull guts, BS, CYA, and lies. Now, in the various chats I've been in today, something that was pointed out was that they were like, he probably didn't write this. His parents probably wrote it and planted it there because there's so much focus on don't on his family and his love for his family and don't give my family a hard time. They loved her, blah blah blah. I don't know about conspiracy theories. I always thought it was odd that all these people with radars and helicopters and dogs and night vision and everything else that you could possibly imagine searched this swamp for what was it, over a month, day and night, heat seeking binoculars and all type of stuff, and they couldn't find him. But his mom and dad go in the park and magically find him within 30 minutes. They basically made a beeline to him and found him in this notebook and this dry bag and all that stuff. So yes, I find it suspicious. I'm not going to comment either way whether I think they planted this notebook or whatever. If they did, then they had to go through some trouble to make it look like it's been underwater or wet for all that long time. That takes some serious forethought. So I don't know. Honestly, I really do think he wrote this. I do think he wrote this because I think he was trying to come up with a story that people would accept and that would take guilt and blame off of him and that he wouldn't face charges as far as murder charges, maybe failing to report a death or something like that. And then when he couldn't come up with a story that would keep him out of prison, then he killed himself. Because not that because he couldn't live without Gabby, but because he couldn't live an institutionalized life and not have his freedoms and his liberties. I think even his suicide was selfish and self-serving. Just another way to try to get pity out of people. So And then at the end to say, please pick up all of my things because Gabby hated people who litter. Dude, I killed myself by this creek in hopes that animals may tear me apart. BS, bullcorn, bullguts, lies. It's just way too much. So I'm not even gonna talk about that too much. I know they're gonna be talking about this in all the videos, on all the platforms, everywhere for the next couple of days. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on it because I did cover the case a little when it was going on, when they were actually searching for him, when they were looking for Gabby. I did cover the case a little bit, so I did want to follow up with this. But I'm not going to dwell on this because we all know what happened. He got mad in a fit of rage. He killed that girl, and then he went and told his family, and they helped him cover it up. They probably were planning to try to help him get out of the country, but the heat just fell on them too soon for him to be able to succeed in leaving. So, yeah, enough of Brian Laundrie.